Or,
And thank you, Mayor and Council, for being here on Thursday morning to hear the recommended budget. So I've got a PowerPoint presentation. I'll go through a bunch of slides here for the general fund and then a very brief second one for the CIP or CIP budget. Before I get started, of course, thank you all for being here and doing this on a Thursday morning. I also just want to acknowledge staff for all the work they put into it. Our department heads putting their budget proposals together and presenting that to you back in March. And then since that time, we've been working to finalize our expense calculations and of course the revenues to see what money we have to work with here. Always with the goal to try and present a recommended budget to you without a tax increase if possible, which this one has no tax increase in this recommended version, which is good news. And then recognize Heather as our assistant town manager for a lot of work on the expense calculations beyond the department heads work on and revenue. So her and I work hand in hand on the revenue projections, and she does a lot of work on that. So, and recognize our town clerk for all the logistics of putting these meetings together. So hopefully it runs smoothly for you. So just wanted to state that since it really helps the whole process to move along well. So with that, I'll jump right in.
Sure.
And please stop me at any point here, questions, comments, and we'll get into this recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026. So first slide here is just a general overview of the budget as far as the big picture numbers. So I'm presenting a recommended budget to you that totals $9,983,074. So we're essentially almost at $10 million. And by the time we make final adjustments here before you adopt it in June, we'll get another valuation estimate from the assessor's office. We also have to update our premium renewals for property and liability coverage. So we don't have that expense calculation, and we'll make some minor adjustments with the final set of values from assessor's office from the county. So this will probably be over 10 million by the time you get to the adopted version in June. So we're just, $9.98 million budget. It's a little over $253,000 increase from the prior year or from the current year, 2024-2025, which is about average. The proposed tax rate, as I mentioned, we're going to try and keep this at the existing 28 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, which is good news. A big thing that's helping with this, and I don't think I have a bullet in here anyway in the presentation, but I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to CIP, is I am recommending we move 1 penny over from what we budget for CIP to the general fund or operating side, because we have plenty of money that, for our capital improvement plan, the CIP, of tax base, property tax base, 7 cents right now, that is budgeting capital expenditures and capital projects. And we typically, the last several years, have had a decent amount of buffer in there. We've had basically fewer capital projects than revenue is available. So we have some room without really damaging that to have adequate money in there for capital expenditures. So it's moving a penny away from there. So from 7 cents that's dedicated to 6. So that helped to make this much more attainable, kind of working within our resources, but shifting some things. So, and then we'll be working on a new 5-year CIP this fall, as we're going into our last year 5-year CIP. So this is year 5 that we're working on here. So that does factor into keeping us at 28 cents the tax rate. So of that 28 cents, that does include what we budget to our contract fire services. So 17 cents of that 28 cents is supporting services in the general fund of Parkland Fire Service that we contract for. 10.5 cents of that 28 cents then will be going towards contracted fire services, Fletcher Fire and Rescue. So I am recommending the fire department had asked for that half cent that wasn't in there before when reval happened, to put that back in here. So that is part of this. And when we get to that and discuss it, we get to the fire department, if you have comments or anything you want to share or any points on that, please stop me. Or if it's something you want to stay at 10 cents, it's something we can talk about.
I know they're going to need it because with the new administration, I guess I should turn my mic on. With the new administration coming in, it's a 180, I'll go ahead and tell you. He's found a lot of holes and everything, gaps that they're trying to do, and their staffing levels are almost back to full level. If you remember before, it was like 10 people down short, and they're right almost back to full level. I know they've got a lot of stuff that they got to work on, and we'll talk about a little bit more about the fire inspections. I was talking to him yesterday evening about that some more for preparing for today to give you some information. So I guess when we get there, we can really go more into that more in depth. So I think that's a good move, giving a 0.5 cent, because the people in the county right now pay 10.5, and the city was paying 10. So Preston, if he was in the city, or if I was in the city, I was getting a cheaper. I was paying less to the fire department than he was getting the exact same service. So, and knowing me from the fire service, I got some townships that we cover as well that's kind of the same way. And you hear a little bit of a grumble throughout the district, because why is this person paying less and I'm paying more, and I get the same fire service, this protection. So yeah, I think that's a good move. I think we should always match the county. This was my opinion.
Yeah, I know we were.
No, I think you answered my question. It sounded like coverage is pretty comparable.
Yes,
From the-
yeah, yeah, this isn't changing. inspections, which they've given us a heads up, over the winter. Still haven't said it's a done deal, but it appears that it's going to happen, at least the last communications I've had with them. And they haven't said what model they want to go with. They presented two models, one being charging by the number of businesses, so they calculate how many occupancy businesses we have. We get a flat fee that would total about $40,700. The other model is they look at the size of the facility in some categories for square footage. And with that, we have a little bit more structures here that are larger because of our manufacturers. And that's a higher rate. So that went up over 60,000 under that model. So when I talked to the county manager last, he said at least plug in with 40,700 platform. So, but I still don't have an answer from them of what they're going to do.
Well, we can if it's up to the mayor.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, spoke to Chief Griffin and told him what we're planning in the budget is about 40,000. If they're still, it will entertain the idea of taking that on as the third party going to the town. And he plugged in some figures, and he called me back last night and says, yes, they'll be more than happy to do he figured up a person that does it. He said how he usually does it is they have to do inspection of the businesses, which are about 400 businesses in our town city limits. And also, they would also be doing fire planning with the planning board. When they do developments, the fire department has to come in and do that. They'll take that piece over and everything, and want to be partners with the town. He's also come up with a scheduling fee of what you're saying. His recommendations will be option 2, because it's not fair. I kind of agree with him on that. Say like Babel's down here has got that little roll-up garage. You charge him the same as Wilson Art right down the road. It's like that's kind of not. He was saying square footage is the most fair thing to do, and he would love to come down and once or if the council says we'll go with them, to sit down with us and go over schedules and everything and be that partner in that piece. But he is willing to accept that responsibility with that $40,000. So, and he can start as soon as July with his person, because you have to have a level 3 inspector. He has a level 3 inspector already in the works. So. He said he'd have to do it. He's got a schedule where you can collect the money and make that. He sent it to me by email last night, and I can send it to you, Mark. But just even with, I want to say that he figured up the cost for that employee. He knows that the employee won't be working maybe 3 days a week, and he'll use the other employee for other administrative stuff. So he's willing to absorb half the cost of that. I think he said like 45,000, but if he said 40 plus the half cents, says if we approve the half cent increase, he said absolutely, then it's a done deal. So he said it'd be hard to do it without the half cent, because he was planning on using that half cent to move. Remember, to patch some holes. That'd be one hole he was going to use that money for. So.
Did they indicate? And I know we talked about this when we get into working out a more formal arrangement, or talking about kind of what they'd all be doing in the terms. But was there any indication they'd be charging businesses?
That's what he'd love to, once we decide that, is come and sit down with you and the council and figure out if they will be charging the business or the town charges the businesses. He says if
that just off, as you know,
Yeah.
that would just.
Yeah, and that's what he says, if the town charges it, he said you just might make more money. So he said it'll cover that, and you probably might increase your budget. So, and that's what he kind of kicked around recommending, but he said whatever we wanted to do, he is more than happy to facilitate that.
Sounds like a good path forward.
The town probably just to charge that and take that same revenue and pay them, but again, if you do 40,000, and after you charge everything, you might come up, say, 50,000, I'm just throwing numbers out, round numbers, and the town makes 50,000. But I told him it ain't all about us making money, it's just, make sure the job gets done.
Yeah.
So, because that person, he's got a list of what that job title is going to do, and it's a lot more than just going out and inspecting businesses. I mean, they'll be going out. Also with that piece is they're going to do development risk assessments and coordinations with all different neighborhoods and everything else. So it's a huge piece this person's going to be doing, and a needed piece that was never there. So with the risk assessments and community coordination and stuff, so.
Yeah, I think the assessment's fair, though, on the square footage side, because, like you say, Babel's is small, but the time it's gonna take to do a walkthrough and do a quality
Minutes versus
inspection, yeah.
And they'll be doing on that, and of course, you gotta do multifamily units and everything, and, so there's a lot more than just a couple of businesses here and there, but he identified 400, so he's already got the numbers, he's been working on it, so he's on top of it, so.
Well done.
Let's keep this thing on. And the county fire marshal says, absolutely, you just want to do it, it takes the load off of him. So he's like, please, it's yours, y'all, yeah.
Because this was precipitated by them, I think it was in the information, they were talking about having to hire another, because they're behind, or they're getting behind, or have been behind.
My understanding, there was 800 inspections behind or more, like, as before the Helene, so I can imagine now.
And then we get
budget workshop
Yeah.
on these things.
Yeah, on his list of.
He's got, yeah,
Decision package.
yeah, he's got like employees, number 1 priority, 2 was the tire changer, 3 was the in-car cameras, and Skag motors, 4. I didn't know if that was his priority, that's what he said, I really need this more than this, but the mower's 18,000 and the camera's
Yeah,
12.
cameras are less.
Yeah, $6,000 less, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
Or I say, which one do you rather have, you know?
Yeah, well, I'll take a look at that
Yeah.
and then have that conversation with them, and if that changes, I'll let you all know.
I know from a safety standpoint and accountability standpoint, they just had that issue, was it Asheville? That had the garbage truck, the lady, and they were able to disprove that, find them not at fault and stuff, so I think, I agree with, especially with the brush truck, with it going into developments where people are walking and stuff and using that arm, I think that would be hugely. Or if just one camera for that truck, and then work on the others later, however that.
Yeah, I'll work on that, and then let you know and come up with a suggestion or recommendation on that.
Would that mower be something we could look at on the CIP side?
It's not.
Does it meet that threshold? That's what I was wondering.
It's 25,000.
Yeah,
And we're not super strict, but I try and adhere to
Yeah.
as much as possible.
You do have
And if
one.
you guys need a break at any point, let me know. Whatever, pause. $355 That's just due to increased costs. That's a little overview of the governing body.
Yeah. I was going to finish. I know you said that COLA's 2.5. Is there also a place in there, I might be jumping ahead, for a merit raise as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, this is a governing body.
Mhm.
That's you guys. So the merit.
Okay.
Is.
You answered my question right there. I was making sure for the employees.
Yes, you got it.
I think you're worth it.
Yeah. No, not for us. I was looking at the total employees, like, y'all, make sure you guys had a COLA raise and also a merit raise. And
Yeah.
that's all I need to know.
I've got the match request in here, the recommendation to y'all, but it doesn't mean you'll approve it. Because I mean, we've had a lot of years where we really scrutinized it and it's come down, not that amount. But if you approve what they have in here, then we could.
The following year with the match.
Yeah, work on
Give us
it.
a year to work on it.
Yes.
Yeah, I just would like to see, I didn't realize we had as much special needs use for that line as we do, so I definitely want to make sure we keep that in mind, and if we can work on that for next year or moving forward.
Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. Very good question. Subscriptions because it's a new director, and there's quite a few that they can be members and having to keep up certifications for, because, like, for example, Eric is a certified zoning official. Eric Cooper, our current director, is a CZO, so he's got to do things to keep up that certification. He's a certified floodplain manager. Some planning and zoning directors have their AICP, which is Institute Certified Planner, the A stands for. So they're keeping up these certifications, and so we don't know what the new planning and zoning director, are they going to be working on some of these things that they don't have it? And so we're not sure all those needs, so we did per Eric's recommendation, and you can, they're small adjustments, raise that slightly, so that brought up the departmental budget, which could come down in next year. The stormwater program, which, we're contracting with McGill Associates and Land to Sky and other expenses that Eric deals with to get some help from Public Works. And this is our MS4 permitting for stormwater. I've recommended lowering that. That's just based on usage and needs. I think that 30,000 should be plenty for our contractual needs.
And we've only spent the 9,380 so far?
Yeah, I mean, we may get a bunch more. Some of the billing is real delayed.
Okay, I was wondering. All right, got it.
Not so much Land to Sky, but yeah, there's a lag. So I'm anticipating a bunch more than you'll see on that spend, but good. Yeah.
I think we already did adjust
Yeah, sure.
And-
I understand.
and where we're at, you know, if you observe, but I did look at where they ended last year, and it was like 20-some thousand.
Okay, so we'll expect more coming in.
And we'll see where it's going. But remember, once we started having them help with this, it we've been refining what level of assistance we need to comply with the MS4 permit on this. So it's a little bit of a work in progress.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah. That's planning department. Town facilities, this is kind of a catch-all departmental. This is, got dues and subscriptions in here, postage, the newsletter, kind of a mishmash. We do have travel and training here that covers travel and training for the manager position, but a slight decrease in the total departmental appropriations from $156,094 down to $153,094. The postage line increased slightly from $5,000 to $5,200 due to increase in cost of stamps. Dues and subscriptions line increased from $17,925 to $18,925. This just increase in dues, we cover a bunch of dues and subscriptions like Land and Sky, Batch, School of Government, a bunch of dues and subscriptions here. Contracted services decreased from $19,700 to $17,700. That's just due to slightly less expense we're anticipating on things we have for contracted services. M&R equipment and maintenance or repair equipment decreased from $1,000 to $600. That's due to anticipated usage. So that's a little bit on town facilities. If there's no question on that, I'll jump into next fiscal year IT. That's behind, please, I'm sorry. Felt like IT should be next. So, yeah, IT's after that. So police department, and if I'm going too fast, or something that's,
You're good.
you know, you want to go back to or to catch, or we can do that at any point from here. I don't want to feel like we're rushing this too fast, but and I know you've had a lot of information in the prior discussions on this. So, but police department, I'll jump into that. A moderate increase, I guess I would say, in the overall budget from $2,269,414 to $2,352,398. The largest increase is associated with adjustments to salary and fringe lines with implementation of our COLA merit. Funding for purchase of the 4, I talked a little bit before already about this, the 4 automated license plate reader cameras. This has been a request that's been in here for several years, and budgets have been funded. So I was able to find a way to keep this in, so the public works didn't get any cameras for the police station. No, we'll work on it. But the, a really good crime fighting tool here.
Yeah.
Really, I think, amazing use of technology that's been out there for a while, and so I really.
Like I said, I used it in the field.
Yeah.
And it's a game changer for solvability on crimes, and so, you know, it says license plate reader, but it's so much more than that. Car color, number of doors, and just be able to, you don't get a full tag, but you know it's a 2-door white car. Now you can go back with a 2-door white car and narrow down your tags, and it was a game changer for us at the sheriff's office.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, and I know she's talking about things, Jim. Yeah, I feel like this is just a huge improvement for us, and you know, we benefit from like sheriff's department and other agencies having it helping us solve crimes. Well, now we'll be able to not only crimes that occur in town or alleged activities, but also help sheriff's department or city of Asheville, or, because now we've got that data for a suspect.
And it's even out of state. I mean, it goes out of state, so if that vehicle does a crime here and we have that information, it might hit on the camera in South Carolina or down in Georgia,
Yeah.
so they can notify, let folks know and try and track them down. So it's huge.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was out there until a couple of years ago, I think when the chief was first talking to me about it, so it's, wow. So, yeah, glad that, if you all approve this in here, that we can enter into that, put those in some strategic locations, and help with crime fighting.
Are there usually like policies that are in place? You might know, John, for the flock
Yeah.
cameras, like, are we able to write those policies in-house? Like, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there'll be general orders that are developed. So the police department has a whole set of very comprehensive set of policies that cover all different things that they do. There'll have to be a general order with.
Yeah, we had one at the sheriff's office, but it's real-time notification. So like if that car goes through a camera here in Fletcher, all the officers will get an immediate email and a text message if they choose to get that, as well as Henderson County Sheriff's Office communication will get that, hey, this car wanted for this crime, or this sex offender that's wanted, or this criminal that's wanted just came through your jurisdiction headed a certain direction. And it gets, it's real time within about 10 or 15 seconds that it will start sending notifications.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So,
That is really
I don't know if
cool.
you're alluding to this, but there are auditors, they do audit the use of
Yes.
this, and-
Yeah, that was my
There's
question.
pretty stringent.
Because I know there's some big brother elements to this,
Uh-huh.
you could misuse it and be monitoring something, or.
What it doesn't
You've
give,
got some other, not valid use or appropriate use of just monitoring people. It's supposed to be used for the suspects.
Right.
and what it doesn't do is, it doesn't give personal information. It's only information that's input into the system by the investigator. So, you get that car information in an investigation. Now, they take that with approval, following guidelines, and go to the National Crimes Computer, put that information in, which then gives them the personal information, addresses, things like that, so they can start trying to locate these folks. But all it does will say that this vehicle that was input for this crime just passed that camera, but it doesn't say this person at this address with all their personal information. It doesn't disseminate that unless it's been input by an investigator for an actual crime.
And it's important to do that, so that, there isn't a misuse of the technology. I know there's still some big brother elements to it, but I don't know, I will say this, it's just the society we live in now. You can go to other countries too, there's so much video surveillance out there. You don't realize it. You can walk down the road here in Fletcher, be having a conversation with your friend on the street, and ring camera, and bringing it up and recording it all, and someone's watching it from their phone, and
Yeah.
it's just.
Can we get a copy of the rules and regulations of using that and doing?
You can go online,
Can we-
flockcamera.com.
But now, that's from the company that provides the cameras, but can we get the policies for the police department, what they have to qualify to do to use that? Because
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, and ever since the chief, he had presented and we fund that, it's a software that they use that helps update policies. I get notified of opinion on it, and I have to look at it, check off too, as they come through periodically, so just some other checks and balances on it. I'm not an expert, obviously, in law enforcement practices, but as a manager, it's just another
check it down, wants to see it, and so what's the content, what's included. But yeah, we can make that request.
But like if policies were to change in the future, we would still have the ability to revoke that. I mean, because I get the whole
Yeah.
being able to track for child abductions and sex predators and all that stuff. But if they change the rules on who and what gets to access that, then we would still have the overall control. Once we're in, we're not in for life. We could always modify our plan or do something like that, correct?
There's a lot of commercial businesses that have gone to using these as well for like shoplifting.
Yeah.
And property crimes and stuff like that. I know Lowe's is enacting them on a lot of their properties now and being able to track these things, so.
Ultimately, just for example, I don't see this going that way, but let's just say you didn't like it and then you feel it was being deployed in the best way and something went wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, ultimately, up to the county council, it could be a policy decision that they're no longer deployed. I mean, the whole being some level of monitoring, just people being videotaped places they go, it's, I don't know, it's been a weird ebb and flow of, a lot of, when you're out in just general public, you lose some level of, I don't want to be videotaped because you're out.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I don't like the watching cameras everywhere you go and face recognition and use, maybe I watch too many movies, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's-
it weirds me out.
Oh, it does a fair amount of people. But, I don't know, it's kind of where we shifted. I mean, you go to other countries like England.
Oh, England's,
they're
extreme.
all over
Every
the
corner.
place.
Yeah.
I just walk around and notice it in other places, you can see it there, but, so, what you do with the video then becomes a different matter.
Yeah.
Being allowed to be videotaped in another place, maybe we don't really know what to do with it after that, you have to be.
There's a lot of retention policies, a lot of dissemination policies that are tied with that, just like the body cameras that,
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was my larger point. I think the flight cameras are great. I think it's a good thing that we have them or getting them. I just want to make sure we have policies in place that prevent us from some kind of abuse or, make sure we have some level of scrutiny so we're not opening up ourselves for liability. That was my larger point, but.
agreed.
Yeah, I agree, and then educating the public, because the public always, they read license plate reader, they're thinking we're looking for expired license plate. That's, and they're like, oh, no, but it's just got to tell them this, no, it's not that, it's to protect the citizens from, active crime and stuff like that.
And I think hitting home the fact, and the chief is very good at this, it's an investigative tool that's only driven by the information input into the system. So to Trevor's point.
It'd be nice if we could reword that license plate reader and put something different, because
Yeah.
if I was a public looking at that, that's what they're complaining about.
Yeah, there's gonna be some, there's probably gonna be some level of,
I would just go back and put it as a flock investigative tool, flock camera investigative
Not
tool.
license
Yeah.
plate reader.
I agree.
well, I just think there's probably gonna be some level of misinformation about what it is and what the use is. And again,
Well,
I'm
like I
not
said-
policy to point to and let the public know that that's not how it's,
Our newsletter, this
Yeah.
is funded and approved, that, that's coming out, just so the public knows how it's used. It'd be a good topic for like.
I think so, yeah.
Reword the license plate reader.
Yeah.
But that website,
Just Flock.
yeah, that
I don't know if that's an acronym or.
FLOCK, yep, flock.com. And it's out there for the general public. They can go on there and read and see the general, the information about it and what it entails.
But if you remember the facial recognition software, that was really.
Yeah.
commercial on that. I don't know if that's been pulled, I was aware of it. I remember like in Virginia Beach, when I lived in Chesapeake, Virginia. They were, it was a long time ago, they was kind of, they were using it there. They had problems, people being stopped and identified as one of the proper suspect. I mean, there was a lot of controversy like that. So this is not that. So, but it's
it's a good use of technology. It's been out there for a while, good firefighting tool. So hopefully this can be a part of our new fiscal year. Let's see. And I mentioned some slight adjustments up and down to other line items. I'll get on a few of them. Postage, we adjusted it down. Chief requested that, just a little less usage there. So from $800 to $700. Travel and training, even though the line item shows a different amount from last year into the coming year, the 12 and 14, we reduced it to the base amount from last year was 12,000. So it was a little bit of an increase of 14,000. And this is just for added depth, this applies to the fuel expense decreased from 62,000 to 58,000. And this is, and not just lower fuel costs, maybe lower consumption, so better term for why. And, we're not fully staffed as far as having fully staffed patrol. I think we're fully staffed with people in training right now. We're down one sergeant. But once we get everybody on the street, full patrol, there'll probably be more consumption of the fuel. Oh, wow. And then it's, fuel prices go so volatile. Department supplies line increased from 29,000 to 30,000. That was due to increased cost for some items.
I know it. I was thinking, I haven't seen one in a long
So
time.
that drug forfeiture line it's an amount we kept in there. It has not been used a lot, and I was recommending lowering the amount on it from 5 to 4. So when they confiscate things as far as drug interdiction, drug busts, some of that money comes back through state and federal to become resources that our police department can use to purchase things. So that's what that line item is, and we've got more reserves than that annual expenditure line item. I think we're up $14,000. Physical drug line decreased from 6,500 to 4,000, and that's due to fewer vacancies and staffing. Uniforms line decreased from 16,000 to 15,000, that's due to less expense anticipated. Network subscription line, and this is the increase for the clock cameras from 11,200 to 26,200. And it will stay up close to that base. It may come down a little bit. I think, most of the increase, it's the purchase of cameras, but then there's an ongoing operating expense to use that technology. It's not cheap. So it will increase our base there if we continue on with at least the 4 cameras, or if we add cameras. So that's a little bit about network subscription of the cameras. And go into IT department unless there's any other questions, please.
I would like, I know they're gonna do it, but to track the stats on the use of those and to really let us know how well
Yeah.
that's helping them here locally with,
Okay.
and outside.
Yeah. I'm sure the chief would be
Yeah,
curious to track. the
I'm
data.
sure, and I'm sure he will, I just, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and justify that money being spent on that subscription would be money saved because less hours put
Man
towards
hours.
trying to figure stuff out. It's gonna cut it down, so it also justify that
Offset.
really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So ITs or our computer department? So our technology or IT department, and we don't, obviously, we don't have an in-house department, we contract for that service. With, it was formerly One Service, now they're called WNC Business IT Solutions. When Matthew Morton took over the company, he was an employee, he bought out the prior owner,
he's got a business partner in there, and they own it. So the WNC Business IT Solutions continues to do really good work with the town, and I've been impressed with the quality of the work they do, efficient and consistency of our operating system here. Jinx this here, but we continue to move along at a pretty consistent pace with the technology use in our computers and other uses of technology work well. And they're very responsive and something just show up, and good on training, so good in troubleshooting. So it's been a good economical way to meet our IT needs. And we have a flat fee now for the expense for them to come out and do work here as opposed to some of the other line items. So it's a slight decrease in the overall departmental budget from $271,220 to $258,600. So this is mostly due to less in total capital project requests compared to prior years. So I think Matthew talked a little bit about, we've spent quite a bit keeping up with our network server replacements, computer replacements, other things that are IT hardware related. So some of that capital has come down, and we're right now in a pretty good place. We're doing this PC replacement process, and this gets into phase 2 of it. But right now we're pretty good shape, and not a lot of big changes or replacements there to equipment. So as I said, due to less total capital projects compared to prior years. The one decision package that was in here for $25,500 for the computer workstation project, I moved that to CIP. It isn't eligible based on the dollar amount, and it helped to take some pressure expense-wise over this operating budget request. So that's moved over. You'll see that in the CIP presentation. So that's IT. A little bit more. We had decrease in the dues line from $18,700 to $13,400. This was due to less expense for web hosting and cloud email service. Our subscriptions IT line increased from $68,950 to $74,050. This is due to vendor rate increases. Capital expense line decreased from $17,420 down to $5,000. That $5,000 we've kind of kept every year, at least $5,000 in there to count for park breaks on the server or just minor things here. People goods on things like that. So it's a very small amount in the capital line in the IT. That's IT. With that, I'll move picking up more on that. I will move the contract and services, special fire and rescue. And we also have Bill Trevor. So obviously most of our fire protection service is through Fletcher Fire and Rescue. They cover the entire town limits plus an area outside of the corporate limits. We're only paying for fire protection within our corporate limits. That portion outside is funded by property taxes that are collected for people living in unincorporated parts of the fire district. I mentioned earlier that they requested it for 10.5. This includes 10.5 cents of what our levy produces. So we added from that 10 to 10.5, that half-cent increase is added back in. The total appropriations then for this year would increase from $1,807,239 to $1,929,522.
We also budget a line item, 24,000 for potential prior year adjustments. And this is, we budget based on what the value estimate is of our tax rate that we receive from the assessor's office. It's a fairly conservative estimate, so we get to adopting the budget, and then after we adopt the budget, we bill, later in the summer. That billing, quite often is a little bit higher than what the last estimate was, so we wind up billing more than what we budgeted. And we have it audited. Heather has our auditing firm, Rodman Church. They come back in and they look at what we wind up billing versus what we had budgeted. So it was a pretty good adjustment we saw this past year, for this current agenda here where that budget was for it. So they get made whole on that, so it's a good thing. So our other department that we contract with, that's the next slide, is Mills River Fire and Rescue. So just for history, and Amber's newer, a bunch of you haven't been on here that many years, but going back to when towns were able to do involuntary or county Michigan annexations, when you would do that, the fire department gets impacted because then they lose tax revenue because they become part of the municipality. So there's something that has to be done to make them whole. And so there's usually a contract period for so many years. And we ended the number of years that we needed to do, but they extended it because they built another fire station out there and the town approved that agreement, and it goes all the way out to
2026, I think.
2026.
Almost there.
Next year.
Next
So
year.
I need to look at the contract and see, is it within this fiscal year we're working on this budget, or is it 26, 27? But this might be the last year. I'll get confirmation on that. So there was one parcel that we annexed back early 2000s, I think, that is in now what is Mills River. And, well, what's right above it is Mills River. And so we have to collect the property taxes on the value and everything that's on that property and distribute it to Mills River Fire and Rescue. Because we extended it out and what the general statute said, it went to 2026. So they're estimating about this year, and it's based on the value of One Quality Way, which is the old Continental property, is that it'll increase from 26,888 to 45,608. We audit this as well to make sure that it winds up getting billed more than what we budgeted, that they get that difference. So we do a little formula where we back out this and from the rest of our tax base, and then an additional ½ cent that Fletcher Fire and Rescue would get. We actually apply it to this parcel too, so they get a little bit more revenue from it. Trying to keep them whole.
So next year, they won't get this revenue. Fletcher won't get that, fire department will not get the 45 you're saying, because you already budgeted this. Go ahead.
Well, Mills River will get it in this fiscal
Yeah.
year, this one we're working on. And then if this is the last year, I'll have to see what the timing of the contract is. 26, 27, if this is the last one, this will go away to Mills River. And
Yeah,
this
correct.
money will go to
Fletcher's house, yeah.
Yep.
Because I know most of when they start annexing, it's usually a 5-year contract, and this contract was different. It's like 100% went to Mills River. It's usually a 5-year contract, and the first you get 100%, it drops 20% each time, so it's like 80, 60, 40, all to zero, and it washes out. And this contract was a whole lot different on this, and this was kind of written
This is
weird.
a good deal for Mills River.
It was a great deal for
Oh,
Mills
yeah.
River, but, yeah,
Very much so.
but I think the time has come where it needs to be, yeah.
We tried to end it several years back and tried to get out of it or early and
So it's a good-
Didn't want to, and that was their business to do that. So we-
And I know why they stagger them usually, because it works for that fire department where they can get adjusted to it. It's a good deal for Mills River then, but next year, whatever, it's gonna be a bad deal for them.
Yeah.
Because that,
Right.
It's gonna be a
instead,
lost
it's a
revenue.
big drop of 45,000
Yeah.
versus it could be a slow, not nudge off. That's
It's
what's
helpful
designed.
to tear it off,
Yeah.
because then it's a shock. In
Correct.
fact, once I know, I need to contact Mills River Fire Rescue, give them a heads up
Mhm.
that this is the last year, if this is indeed the last year,
Yeah.
however that time. So they have. some-
Yeah, they're gonna get a hit on their budget.
Hey, this is gonna end, you're gonna have a bit of a hit
Mhm.
on it, so.
So, yeah, when they did that contract, they wasn't thinking far enough ahead that
Yep.
it's gonna hurt Mills River.
Yeah. But they benefited tremendously from coming out for as long as it has. So, yeah, that's soon to end. It's funny how time flies. I remember years ago, it said, oh, it's out in 2026. Now it's 2026.
We're here.
So that's it on the fire departments. And you guys are in good shape. I'll move on to public works. Good. Good. Yeah. So Public Works, fairly significant increase in the total departmental budget here. Appropriations from $1,579,443 to $1,689,937. A lot of this is the full-time position being added in there, the maintenance specialist position to help keep up with the volume of work as we continue to grow. Capital requests, we've got the new tire changer and mower included. I'll meet with Javel and we'll look at some of this relative to the discussion we had about cameras.
Okay.
Recycling costs going up due to CPI provision. And if you're curious what it is, the monthly household fee and what the change is. So how we do this is we charge a monthly household fee throughout the year for all the households that we pick up on. And it's currently $4.39 a month. And we don't, I said earlier, there's no separate solid waste fee. That's the bill that comes to the town. We don't pass it on to the homeowner or charge a solid waste fee. But it goes from $4.39 up to $4.52, and so that's that 3% increase. It's about $6,900 annual increase in expense. And I'll just a comment on curbside management. I believe it's worked well for a number of years. I hope as residents here that I hope that it's worked well for you as far as their service. And, we get some blips now and then if something complaint or something needs to be addressed, but they're very responsive. We've found curbside and trying to address it.
They do a good job.
So I think they have a good customer service ethic, and there's not many recycling operators in the area. And they're one of the few, it's called the MRF, or Material Recycling Facility. And that's the place that receives it, processes it, and gets it out to markets. And there's not many MRFs in the area, and they're different because they're I don't say like mom and pop, but they're family owned. And so it's kind of nice to have that, not just some part of a big company. And they collect for a couple other municipalities like us, but they're the MRF for a bunch of jurisdictions around here. So they have a lot of materials going through. And contrary to some popular comments on that, they do recycle materials, and they do get them to a market, and they don't just throw it in the lane. There's a lot of people's comments like that. And I can't guarantee they never put anything in. I mean, we don't go by and watch them, but they've made a pledge particularly Asheville, is a big deal that they're not taking the recyclables. And they've even, to the point on that, and I don't know if they're still doing it, but I know with the prior owner, they had a little bit of a transition of some of the other families taking it over, and the prior owners in retirement now, but they even stockpile some of the materials there so they can get it to the market. So that showed some of their commitment to get the recycled materials to a secondary market, not throwing it away. So other expenses in public works, I mentioned, salaries lines, these increase to the new position, and then COLA and merit adjustments. Fringe benefit lines increase with the position and COLA and merit adjustments. The increase in utilities, so utilities is a little bit of a misnomer, that line item utilities in public works, street lights. So we pay, a lot of people don't know that, we're paying a street light bill, street lights on 25, and then most of the rest of it's in the subdivisions or our neighborhoods, and that comes to the other DOT roads. But that's a big expense, and that's $127,589 estimated up to $144,000, and that's due to a Duke Energy rate increase. And maintenance to repair town facilities, so that's town hall, the public works building, old PD, which is Parks and Rec maintenance, with a bunch of buildings and grounds kind of related to our town facilities. That up a little bit from $105,000 to $108,500. This is to help cover a maintenance on a ventilation system for the evidence room, which is very important because sometimes there's drugs stored in there, and keep those things ventilated properly. So that's evidence, town maintenance and repair town facilities, maintenance and repair M&R vehicles increased a little bit from 44,000 to 46,000. This is just due to increased fleet, because we do have a little bit bigger fleet now. We did add another brush truck, and so we boosted our fleet there. It was last year we had another pickup truck. So that from 44,000 to 46,000.
I know a resident recently reached out about a street light on the corner of Wood Hill. I know he talked about the traffic, that's out of our realm, but I can't remember what the email said, but is there already a street light there, or
One
what was
north
the?
and one south, a couple of 100 feet one way, about 300 feet the other way, but just not directly right on that intersection.
Okay, so
I mean, Deborah's going out and looked at it, and the way
They're working
location,
properly and-
they have to
yeah.
hold the light pole in there, and they're trying to draw from the existing power poles there.
Mhm.
And there is street lighting there, and it's not the brightest, and it's, you can navigate that, and see,
Yeah.
you can see okay at night, it is, it's just not really bright, I think that's.
but it works and it's functioning, yeah. That's, okay,
I mean, our
yeah.
assessment, it would necessitate another street light right there due to the other lighting. Plus, you're going to have, they're going to build something on that.
Right, yeah, on the new property,
It's
yeah,
that
sure.
built, and it's probably going to be something that's going to generate a fair amount of traffic.
Yeah. That's valid, sure.
It'll be lit up probably 24/7. It will light up. You're looking at it lighting up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That spot. We haven't had other requests for street lighting or additional street lighting on that. So
that was our assessment.
Sure.
It didn't warrant based on a lot of analysis of that intersection and existing lane.
Yeah, thank you.
Without that business, without the old savings gas there,
Yeah.
you know, I'll say this, going south, it's a little hard. You gotta watch for that intersection a little bit at night. But it's funny because there's a utility box with a large green light on the side of it that shows it's got power, and that's kind of the marker that a lot of the residents in there look for, but, and it's a little dark, but I agree, once something gets built there and there's some business lighting, that will help.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
If we have other residents that are requesting or concerned about it, let us know.
Okay.
And, you know, we'll reassess it. I mean, you know, I guess we could, you know, didn't quite raise the level of requesting another street light. We could still, I guess, do that. I don't know what the logistics would be.
Well, I even know some of the discussion when they were looking at the gas station down there was they were gonna require them to put a red light at that.
Traffic light,
Traffic
yeah.
light there, and a lot of folks didn't want that because it draws attention to the fact that, hey, there's a through road there
Yeah.
that brings a lot more traffic, and so right now, you still get it when 25 backs up because the locals know they can cut through,
But the other people don't.
but the other people don't, so they stay on 25 and don't flood the development with through traffic, but
Yeah.
And hopefully 126 gets, and they've made a lot of progress. Hopefully
It's
that
not nearly
alleviates.
as bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully it alleviates a lot of that.
Yeah, it should help. I think if whatever's built there, they'll probably generate a lot of trips.
Mhm.
Probably trigger a TI, a traffic impact analysis. Likely the light, which I know people want, you know, all
Yeah.
that does is draws more light.
Mhm.
Stop it. During the day, I mean, it's fine. I don't know, but if we're getting more on it, let us know. There's others. Okay.
I think just the one person, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Other expenses, public works related, so landfill charges is what we pay, tipping fees when they bring, basically the garbage truck from Spalding Municipal Solid Waste, general household trash. That, expense going up from 139,000 to 145,000, it's just due to volume increases in new households coming. Plus, we've got, potentially, just found this out just before I put the presentation together, so I don't, we might be needing more expense in here, but we've heard that the county, because about 2 years ago, we switched from going to waste management, the private one up on Pond Road in Buncombe County, because it was significantly cheaper, even though you have to fuel and all this, it was a better deal to go there than to go to the county's transfer station. But then it got to the point where it was more economical to go there, but now it's not a done deal, we don't know if it's going to be 7, but they may be raising the tipping fee by $7 a ton, which is significant. So Jago is looking at what waste management is currently charging, and trying to get more information on that. If we may switch, if not going to the counties. The county wanted us to come to the years, so.
Real quick question, just to back up a little bit, department supplies, there was a decrease of 47,000, from 55,000 all the way back down to 8,000. I was just kind of curious.
Yeah, and this, I think, is one of
We
the.
bought trash and recycling cans at the beginning of this year, so it was at 45,000.
So that's what it was, okay,
And I try to back out anything that's not
yeah.
So that's,
I was just curious where that big gap
Yeah,
just
that's-
dropped, okay.
Yeah, I saw that.
Makes sense, okay.
yeah, that's where I was saying.
Thank you.
And some of these, it might not show exactly the amount I had here, what it was prior year, to the new year. But yeah, we had to back out something that was.
It's already purchased, yeah.
So that brought it down to what we consider more base.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, good catch, and I probably should have pointed that on the ones out, there's not many that are like that, but, Yeah, that was a big expense last year to do it. Periodically, we got to get cameras. Adding households and another hours. So, I think I got this slide here. I mentioned the street lights, the ventilation system, and then increased parks, landfill charges, recycling. So recycling line going up from 164,000 to 179,900. That's due to that household fee going up by 3% based on the contract. The capital outlay line, we just have one of those two items that are recommended on the capital outlay line, which is the lower at 18,000. And then tools and equipment line increased from 14,000 to 26,000. This is for the tire changer, and it's not equipment, but it's a software. OBD scanner is scanner on codes in the car. We have that there that our mechanic uses. So the tools, equipment, those are those. So that's Public Works and what's being recommended and projected in there. So if any other questions on that, I'll move into the Powell bill. And Powell bill, I mentioned it going up a little bit before. We essentially budget for the revenue side the same amount on the expense side on this. So we budgeted revenue-wise, $259,000 on revenues coming in, and then it'd be $259,000 on the expense side. We usually spend right about that, maybe a little bit more. We have some money typically still in the holding account for probable expenditures that rolls. It's not the fund balance, it's just a small amount in dispersing. We typically, once we do the resurfacing contract and any other eligible Powell bill expenses, do a budget amendment during the year. And we're not usually still not hitting any fund balance, but it's just a budgeting thing we have to do to comply with the local government budget fiscal control act. So that's why you might see, it looks like we're spending more than budgeted, but we have technically, but we haven't gone over what's available this year.
There is some discussion in General Assembly right now about Powell bill. So, like if you're a large city, they may think we all get Powell bill. So, we'll be waiting.
Along with other things.
Along with other things, so.
You get some years, and there was more years ago, where it seems like every general session, we're playing defense. Changes that the General Assembly is considering to distribution of revenues, which is huge. We can't do the things we do, we can't provide the services we provide, we don't have the revenues, or enough revenue, or consistent, and reliable, and it hasn't done that so much, although it's one right now. And this year it's more land use authority, restriction, taking things away from local government's ability that you all are elected to do. Have oversight of these things, so.
How is the Powell bill funding dispersed to us? Because it's not in a lump sum, right?
2 times a year.
2 times a year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dispersed twice a year.
Okay.
And it's been a good, reliable source of monies for us to keep up with street facilities. It really has. Some municipalities can't just because they have so many roads. And the formula is skewed towards larger municipalities. So 75% of the distribution is based on the population, only 25 based on road miles. So it's your population and road miles that go into it.
So you could have a ton of road miles, but if your population is low, it's skewed more towards those larger municipalities. Granted, some of those bigger ones need it because they got a lot of roads that they're maintaining in the big cities. But
That's poor old Laurel Park, they're in the pickle right now. They're like $12 million to repair all the roads from the Helene
they've been
damage that
subsidizing.
that sounds about right.
Yeah,
It's
that, and even before that, they didn't have enough Powell monies to keep up with their
Right.
road resources, so they were putting a lot of other general fund money.
Yeah.
Significant amounts of general fund to kind of subsidize
Yeah.
the maintenance repairs on that.
I think we talked about a private road over in Wildwood that had some damage because of Helene, if I'm not mistaken,
the gardens.
Wildwood Gardens. Yeah, have we heard anything about what's happening over there?
I
Or have we?
haven't heard anything recently, I'm trying to think the last thing I heard on it.
The two main roads going in there were town roads, but it's the little side streets across the creek, I believe, was,
Yeah, that's right.
because the culverts were undersized, I think, when Jabbo and them looked at it years and years ago.
Yep. And they just went back to some of the old Rodney Brady, who's probably where I guess still doing that. Yeah, they were still pulling funding together, but the bigger issue was getting a good handle on what the repair was and like any permitting and being engineered properly. That was, I think, the bigger issue than.
Yeah, I heard from Steve over there for a while, and it's gone quiet here lately, so I don't know.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything. I was
We try to
curious.
help them as much as we can and make sure they pull all the money,
Yeah.
Because it's per household, you get up to, it's like 40,000.
And last I heard, that's what they were really working.
Property, but if you lived on that street, you were blocked as a road. Every one of those homes could request that money that goes toward the road.
Yeah, that's just a really
Should be enough for the repair.
Yeah, it's just a really overcomplicated process. I think that the federal government needs to fix, because it should just be, I don't know if they have a HOA over there, but,
They do.
so it should just be the HOA should be able to apply for that and
Yeah.
repair their private road.
And I think they
because it's-
did, but then they were told they needed to go back and do the per household
Yeah.
filing,
Yeah.
so that it's
That's
each
crazy.
person.
Yeah.
But then what you run into, which I'm
Very
hearing too, on the MPO side and everything, is people are getting that money, it goes to the private individual,
Don't
and
fix
some of
the
the
problem.
private individuals aren't paying it back in to repair the roads
So
and
just go to
using it
HOA.
for other things, so it's,
That's a challenge too.
It
Yeah,
is.
because it goes to, just pick on you, Jim, it goes to Jim Player, but if Jim Player doesn't,
if I want to go buy a new boat, I can go buy a new boat, because
Yeah,
there's no
there's just too many,
accountability.
there's just too many hoops to do this, yeah.
which boats are nice and everything, but if
People need roads to get to their house.
the road should be more important.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you control,
Yeah.
and people don't know, they don't know what hoops to jump through, and it helps to have someone help coordinate it, and you're not in an HOA, or have a strong HOA that says, okay, this is what we need to do, and hire someone, and make sure they collect the money from the people to do it, otherwise the road's not, it
Right.
takes that kind of thing in place, and,
Yeah, I think in the first recovery package, the state passed, I think there were some monies in there for private
Yeah,
roads and
roads.
bridges, and I'm just kind of curious if the folk over there know all the resources that are available, or if we need to
I don't know.
connect them.
I think they were going to the center.
Were they going to the center?
Yeah, they were following up
I
with
can
stuff.
reach out, or have staff reach out to them to just make sure that they can check that in the state resources. or
Yeah.
Find out what.
Yeah, it just feels like there's so many hoops for them to jump through, and I hate for it to get,
That's a good point, because there was some state money that was supposed to come for.
yeah, and if
And I
I'm
know
hearing
some-
they're having some struggles, then that might be,
And I know some folks got turned down, and when they went to the center, they determined they were missing paperwork, was the whole reason they were turned down. But nobody reached back out and says, you're being turned down because of this, it was just, you're turned down. So once they got the correct paperwork in and filed, everything,
Yeah, I know a lot of people missed out on a lot of
Yeah,
funding
they
because they
did.
just didn't read the rest of the letter that they got back where it says you're turned down, but these are things that you need to do to get
Follow
the, yeah.
Is this for the state?
That sounds like FEMA,
That's
but the
FEMA,
state, I think,
yeah.
maybe has some separate funding
Yeah,
available.
but that was the FEMA.
Yeah,
They
that's
had to
the
go through
FEMA.
disaster
Yep.
Covers or call number.
right.
But I haven't heard how the process is to get
The state money.
I don't, and we'll find out.
I think we just had too much red ink in our stamp, because it just kept sending me the climb.
Well, I think that'd be helpful. Sorry not to
No,
get us off topic too much. I was just thinking about that as roads came
I
up.
haven't had much come down to me, like through emails or, hey, this is the state funding that's available now, and this is how much is from private roads and bridges, and hey,
Yeah. And I'm not sure how it's dispersed either. I just saw there was a number there, so I assume there's some level of access to it. I just don't understand how to get it, yeah.
And again, our Powell is used mostly for street research. We can do street construction on it, as y'all know, sidewalks, there's some other things. I think wisely, though, we've used it, 90-some% of it is used for street resurfacing costs. There's equipment that we can purchase, like snow plows and things like that. So there's another question. I'll move on to Parks and Rec. That's our last departmental and then CIP. So I think we're all recently here. So Parks and Recreation, a slight decrease in our overall departmental appropriation from $778,178 to $764,351. And that decrease in salaries, if you see it there, it's due primarily turnover of director and program supervisor. So our prior director, Greg, retired. Josh had moved into that, and so there's coming up with a new position with some salary savings there in both positions being new, and so that's why we see some of that coming down. No additional full-time or part-time positions are requested this year in that department. And no new capital requests this year. Josh didn't have to be in there, and I guess they feel right now they're in good shape in both of those respects. That will change at some point in the future. I mean, that usage of park, and if you add any other park facilities, it's wow. I mean, we get a lot of usage of the park. And of course, this is not just about parks, it's about our programs, other activities here. So the salary and fringe lines decreased again due to that turnover of management staff. Part-time salary increased a little bit from $105,000 to $115,000. This is due to increases in hourly wages to try and keep that competitive. We pay quite a bit for part-time because we've got 3 permanent part-time maintenance positions, and then some that we have them coming in and out to help with building attendance. The summer day camp program, that's the other big part-time, that's a seasonal part-time expense. So that's why that's as high as it is. Increase in utilities line from $36,000 to $38,000. That's due to Duke Power rate increase. Fuel expense decreased here a little bit based on estimated usage from, increased a little bit from 9 to 10,000 due to fuel projections. Program materials expense increased a little bit from 34,000 to 36, and this is for some new programs. We're looking at adding like adult kickball in the fall. We used to do adult kickball dropped it, so we'll try that out. Be careful how hard you go out there. Right there.
That's right. That's right.
And some other adjustments in Parks and Rec, the summer day camp increased a little bit from 35,000 to 37,000. This is just due to inflation and programs. They do a bunch of field trips with it. The parks and supplies line increased from 4,000 to 5,000. This is due to adding some programs that they can through there. The program registration fee increased from 15,000 to 2,500. This is due to some new classes, like we got one tomorrow. Yep, tomorrow night. It's, you've heard of these things where the, what's the thing you use for, where you draw and sit line. This one is mocktails. Mocktails and it's paint, and it's filled up, so it should be nice. So they're trying some new stuff, and it's nice to use a nice facility and the multi-purpose room up there. Park maintenance, contract services increased from 23,000 to 25,000, just due to inflation, increase in costs for, this is things like, they get the plumber out to fix the line at the park, big park. Park maintenance increased from 55,000 to 60,000. This is just due to repairs and park usage. There's lots of supplies that go into that park maintenance, and maybe figure the garbage, the doggy poop bags, you name it out there.
Mark, just real quick, back to the summer day camp.
Yes.
I know we're close on the park, but the damages down there aren't going to affect their use of the park and what they've done in the past summers with the day camp kids as far as having a place for them to get out of the weather, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, no, it shouldn't.
Okay.
All the areas that they use are open, shouldn't be prohibited from being used, and that the park shelter, they use a lot, and the power is restored. They don't use the
Okay.
power in there, but that's been fixed. The contractor we hired to do that has got that part done. They're almost done with that, like I mentioned.
Okay.
But no, they should be good to go
Okay.
up there. Yep, it's a good question. And I don't know, it may be towards the end of summer day camp that you go down to the creek. They won't be able to get, they might not be able to get past that bridge, because they'll be doing the work on that.
Well, I know they went to some of the county pools too during
Yeah.
the summer, and I know some of those aren't accessible.
We're going to Cane Creek Pool.
Going to Cane Creek, so that
We
one,
got in before some of the. county
Very good.
people, so it's
Okay. good,
Yeah.
very good.
And are we still in, I know we talked about this a little bit, but the grants for the Greenway, are we still in a good place there? Or what?
Haven't applied for anything new. We got the $100,000 grant, I think it was Connecting Communities.
And there was a match requirement, right?
Pardon me?
And there was a match requirement?
Yes, I think there was.
50?
50%, I think.
So, and then we applied for the other one, and I haven't heard yet on that. That was a lot more money, it was like 200,000. And I've got it to CIP about matching funds.
Okay, yeah, that was my question, yeah.
It's in there. This has impacted the whole storm storm thing is, conserving Carolina that buys running grants. I think they're still decent capacity to do it, but they're impacted as a nonprofit with a lot of this. And they're having some impact from a federal program that they help administer that the DOJ is.
Everything on hold.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. They were reaching out for funding.
Even with the creek banks where it's supposed to go, I can imagine what it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably all
As we
debris.
extend these, we gotta be
removed.
really careful that it comes back at a decent distance from them.
Yeah.
So we don't run into the future of
can't guarantee that that would be a problem anywhere on the trail, but I think we can do a little better job of not having them
So close.
like some parts of the park, which is really nice if you walk, I mean, it's neat to walk along there, and it's beautiful. It's really nice to see the water running right there. But it is a challenge here. Get too close to the trail. So that concludes the operating budget, and I'll go into CIP, which is very approved. So,
Yeah, does anybody need to take a break? Are we good to keep going? Okay. Do you want a motion to recess until 11:40? That gives about 10 minutes.
That's good.
Okay, somebody want to make that motion?
I make a motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, motion until 11:40. Motion, break until 11:40, excuse me.
I forwarded you an email, Mark, from
improvement plan, or CIP. So as we have done in years past, we do a separate capital budget that is funded within the capital improvement plan, or CIP. And recommending that the capital budget include 6 cents of the tax levy to fund eligible projects. As I mentioned before, this is a change moving the previous 7 cents that was in here down to 6 cents and moving that penny over to the operating side. So that's what's happening here. So at 6 cents, that generates on the tax levy $1,128,372 in revenue for FY 25-26. 4 cents of that 6 cents would be dedicated for projects supported by debt service or loans. And then the remaining 2 cents goes towards non-debt service projects or programs with pay-as-you-go, call it. So the amount of tax levy that's available for debt service, what 4 cents generates, would be $752,248, and then the amount of tax levy, what 2 cents generates, would be $376,124 for new projects without debt. So what are our projects? CIP or debt service side, we have several. One is the town hall improvements, which was when the current town hall was built and we acquired the land north of town hall, the 21 acres there, and then reconstructed Old Cane Creek Road going down to Cane Creek Road. And then the second project is Highway 25 land acquisition. So several years back, we acquired the land on Highway 25 here between Fanning Bridge and Howard Gap for the town center project to supplement that. And then the third project is copier lease payments. And this is something as a GASB requirement, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, that we have to account for on the debt service side, and we have coordinated that. And then the fourth, and this is another GASB requirement, is subscriptions payments. So the specific dollar amounts for those projects, debt service on town hall is at $326,256. Debt service on Highway 25 land acquisition for the coming years at $157,164. And then once hopefully we would sell that property one day, that debt service goes away on that. Debt service for the copier lease is $12,150. The subscription payments is at $30,630. So if you total those and subtract it from how much appropriations we have, what 4 cents generates, it leaves you a surplus balance of $226,048. So you can see we still have some room. So if you had another project with debt service, it gives you a fair amount of room there, even if it was something larger, like a financing associated with the debt development here. So going into the cash side of pay-as-you-go, we have 3 projects here. One is the police car, patrol car rotation. We typically we have that in our CIP. We try to do 3 cars. And the chief indicated we really needed 2 in this year. So at 2 cars on that project, that would be $110,000, what that estimated. The Cane Creek Greenway extension we talked about before, we've got that in the CIP any given year to put $100,000 in there really towards match. That's in here as a project. And then computer workstation project, that was the item we talked about shifting from IT over here, and that's at $25,500. So you add those up and you subtract that from the amount of revenue that we have available on what 2 cents produces, and it creates a surplus of $140,624. So, you know, a couple things with these surplus items. You know, these are estimates on all these problems, well, except for the debt service, we know what that is specifically, but on the cash or pay-as-you-go, this could wind up when the bid things coming in a little bit higher, so it gives you some room there to cover that. On the non-debt service, or the debt service side, we have a good surplus there. You know, we could apply some of that to pay down additional principal on debt. There's some other things in our fund balance policy, because we'll be bumping up again, well, maybe not at the end of this fiscal year, but we did last year, to just right above that 65%. So we have a fund balance policy that we try to keep between 45 and 65% unassigned fund balance as a percentage of our general fund expenditures. And if you go below that 45%, we try and make sure you're getting enough revenue in there to get it into the 45%. If it's above, you start spending down some of that so that we're not keeping an unreasonable amount of fund balance available.
And also just let, we all balance the budget with 248,000 fund balance. That's kind of, it's almost kind of, if you don't spend on the debt side, you don't spend on fund balance, it should.
Considering Helene and, you know, there's no guarantee that we're going to get all of the FEMA reimbursements. We probably will, but it's not 100%, it's about 75%. In light of that, getting through the year and completing those repairs, getting reimbursed and having some gap, I mean, I would recommend at this point that you don't automatically obligate these monies, because this will help to offset if there's a potential, you know, it comes in under budget on revenues, and we're going to have a gap a little bit to cover some of those expenses from the damage. So, I mean, overall, we're in very good shape financially. Obviously, we're fortunate that on the Helene damage, that we didn't have much higher expenses to deal with. The big kicker on this, while we didn't, even though we didn't have a lot of damage to public infrastructure other than the park, the big kicker is we didn't take on all the debris removal expense. Otherwise, this would have been considerably higher, and we'd be floating a lot more money until we get FEMA reimbursement. So with the county doing debris removal primarily, and us kind of falling under their umbrella, which was very helpful, even though, you know, it's taken a lot longer than other people would hope. That's helped for our Helene damages and expenses not to be so high. And then having public works help with some of the collection part of it was helpful. So, you know, all those things and still being a decent revenue picture, I think helps us quite a bit. So, you know, the next step on this, we'll further refine our revenues, really just property tax. We'll get another set of values the middle of this month from the tax assessor. Probably go up a little bit. I think there's a chance it could go down. I don't think there'll be much of an adjustment. So we'll factor that in. If we can, maybe apply it to get our fund balance, the non-used fund balance down a little bit. And our expense, that last big expense thing is the property and liability insurance coverage, our premium. We don't have that in yet, so that's, I'm sure it's going to go up. So that'll be expensive.
Yeah.
So those are really the things that are kind of hanging out there. I know we'll make some adjustments potentially on what we budget expense-wise on fire inspections, but it looks like we have good potential opportunity to partner with a bunch of fire and rescue to do that. So those are kind of my final comments on this, that once we make those adjustments on expense revenue, I'll be working on a budget message that'll probably include some of those tweaks in there, if we have that at that point. That budget message, that draft budget will be available for public comment and review no later than June 1st. I'll have it done before then. We'll put that out for comment and review. You'll get a copy of the budget message and that kind of current expense revenue calculation. And then the last thing is we hold a budget public hearing at the regular meeting in June. We'll advertise for that as a public comment, peer review before you potentially adopt it at the June meeting. So those are kind of the next things. Some final expense revenue adjustments, budget message, comment review, public hearing, and adoption at the June meeting. If you have other things that come up or burning issue or something you want to talk about, let me know so I can bring this back to all of you and we'll take it from there. So, if you have any questions?
I know we've received some back from FEMA for reimbursement. How much are we waiting on? How much do we?
Well, right now we've got everything we've submitted.
Okay.
So all of our other projects are still being done, so until I go in and finalize all the final expenditures, it's still going to be.
Yeah, well, I'm glad
Pretty much
it,
anything in that other fund, which would be all your park repairs, the bridge, the electrical repairs. Once we get it all finalized, then I can submit everything up in the grant pool. So.
wonderful. Well, I'm glad it came quickly. I know I've heard rumblings about other, yeah.
It'll be several
Yeah.
$100,000.
Yeah.
I think we're going to wind up, I don't want to jinx ourselves here before we did this last part, but maybe less than what our projections were of damages.
That'd be good.
Which is good for all of us.
Yeah. Then my final comment, I'll just say, I'm glad we did do the debris pickup, because I know there's a bit of a question mark there, because I know the federal government didn't extend out the 100% debris removal reimbursement, and I'm wondering what that number looks like for the county if they end up not approving that. And so I'm glad, because my guess is it might start to get even slower because of that, but I'm glad we picked it up, yeah.
You've heard some of the figures from the county for millions.
Yeah.
So it just the sheer not trying to get rid of all that.
Yeah. And then, thank y'all. I think y'all did a wonderful job.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good job.
Did an excellent job.
All right, any other business from council? All right, we got a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Okay, a motion to adjourn in a second.
Second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, we are adjourned.